Hello, friends.
And welcome to Like Anime. This is our demon episode. There's a lolly demon, as you might have heard.
I peed in the bathtub
But why?
because I wanted to.
To make the show interesting. I failed. So if you like demons peeing in the bathtub, you've come to the right place. Because that's what we do in podcast form as a metaphor. We pee in your bathtub, and we are back.
Demonically.
Demonically.
We pee in your bathtub demonically.
Yes, yeah.
And we're lolies.
Yeah, really cute demons.
Yeah.
So it's cute that we peed in your bathtub, but you're still confused. And my name's George, and with me is Tony.
Tony.
But yeah, we are joined. This is our third episode of the week. This is a spotlight episode.
Despite what George says, we are not joined. We are completely separated.
And moving forward for this season, these episodes will, either feature a show from this current season that we're enjoying, or it'll be like over a season or a whole series that we want to talk about. Check back next week. We're going to do Fruits Basket, the first 25 episodes of the new 2019 Fruits Basket.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're diving into that, and we'll be covering that throughout the season.
Is that when it came out? No, 2018, wasn't it?
I thought it was 2019. But maybe you're right.
I don't know.
Maybe you're right.
Seems like 2019 was not long enough ago, but I guess it's possible.
I'll stake my life on it.
All right. Let me get a knife while you look it up.
Yeah, but this episode, we're going to highlight a couple shows that we want to dig in a little deeper. And they're the boy shows, Peach Boy Riverside and Sonny Boy
episode.
The boy episode. Sorry, feminists. I don't know. It wasn't intentional. We both picked a show we wanted to dig a little deeper into, and I picked Sonny Boy, but Tony picked the show we're going to talk about first, which is Peach Boy Riverside.
Yeah, Peach Boy, and it most of the cast is girls, so.
That's true.
Yeah.
There's like a legendary Peach Boy, right? But
Momotaro.
But he hasn't. I only saw the first episode, but.
Yeah, are you familiar with the legend of Momotaro? They sort of recap it in the show, I guess, right?
It was briefly discussed at the end of the first episode. Yeah.
Yeah. So, thus far, there's not a lot of connection to that, but yeah, the story is like there's this. I think he's a hunter, maybe, and his wife, they live out in a cabin in the woods, and they wish for a child, but they can't have one or something. And one day the hunter goes out hunting, and he sees this peach floating down the river, and he picks it up out of the river, and it opens, and there's like a baby boy inside. And they raise this boy as their own. And then he becomes a demon slayer, basically, an Oni slayer. That's basically the gist of it. And they hint at things related to that in this, but there's not just Momotaro, there's these other peach boys, if you will, including a girl who is, I guess, only half because she's only got the one eye. Anyway, might be going too far into stuff before we get into the stuff. So episode 1 we talked about before, and it was really like just sort of set up. We've got our main girl Sally, and she meets Frau, the rabbit girl, and then they go to a town where people are racist against monster girls, and then Frau saves the town, and then they're still racist against monster girls, and then they go to a different town where people are also racist against monster girls, and then Frau and Sally save the town from some Oni that attack. And then in episode 2, we get to see more of the battle that happened, which I guess you didn't see.
Between like the walrus guy and the
walrus
lolly.
guy and Frau and Sally.
Oh, okay.
The lolly is still outside of town at that point, but we
Okay.
get a little bit more information about her, I guess. She's only a lolly when she has used all of her power. It takes her a while to recharge. So eventually she recharges, and she's like a probably 20-something year old girl. But then she, uses all of her power trying to fight someone else, and turns back into a lolly, and then stuff happens. I don't know, spoilers. But basically, the reason I wanted to talk about this show is because they decided to do this show in a different order than the manga, which a lot of people, I guess, were like, why are they doing that? A lot of people seemed opposed to that idea for some reason. And I guess after having watched the first 4 episodes, I sort of understand why they're doing it. But I don't think it was the right choice either. So the 4th episode of the show is what would be the first episode if you were doing it in the order of the manga, and in chronological order, in fact, where we get sort of introduced to Sally and another main character who we only briefly see in the first 2 episodes. We see a little bit more in the 3rd episode, but the 3rd episode seems to be a time jump. The timing, the pacing and stuff is sort of a mess in this, but the first 2 episodes, like, I liked Sally and Frau, and they seemed like the main characters and like who this story was about. And I think that's the intent, was to present it that way, regardless of whether that might actually be true or not, because there is another person who seems to be a main character whose name I don't have written down, but is another of the Peach Boy clan. Anyway, in episode 3, like I say, it's like a big time jump, and then they like tried doing more story setup, but it's not like super compelling. And then in episode 4, they jump back in time to prior to the events of episode 1 that we saw, and basically, like I say, introduce us to Sally and this other character who we have already seen in a little bit in episode 2 and also in episode 3. And I think like the story of what has ended up being episode 4 would have been more compelling as a first episode, at least for this other character's sort of arc, because we're introduced to this character for the first time, and then we see him do like terrible things, basically. And also, he's a him, not a she, even though he's got like long hair, which Sally mistakes him for a girl. But because we've already seen the first 3 episodes, we know that he's a boy. So that surprise is already lost on us.
Oh, wow.
The fact that he's this sort of maniacal Oni killer who just enjoys killing Oni, ogres, whatever they call them. That's also lost on us because we saw that in episode 3 and also episode 2, in fact. So like all of this setup stuff that this episode is doing as a first episode would have made sense. But as a 4th episode, like there's no surprises here. There's nothing. Yeah.
Kind of deflated itself before it.
But the reason, I think, from what I read, the reason that they are doing they did the 2nd episode as the first, basically, was because they wanted Sally and Frau basically to be the main characters, and they're likable characters, and I get it. I liked them in the first 2 episodes. The 3rd episode goes off the rails a little bit, and then the 4th episode we meet Sally and see the first time that she sees Frau. But that first episode, which is the 4th episode, this is getting confusing, isn't it?
It is.
She's only probably like maybe 30% of that episode. It's mainly focused on this other Peach Boy.
Okay.
Who's, I should have wrote his name down. I don't remember it though.
Is he the original Peach Boy?
No.
Oh, wow.
I mean, not as far as I know. His name is not Momotaro. So,
okay. So it wouldn't be that one. And so you're having trouble. It sounds like you're having trouble at this point knowing who really is the main character and who you're going to be following.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they set it up so that Sally was the main character and Frau, being sort of secondary to that, following Sally around. But now this other main character, who, again, we saw in episode 3 playing a more major part, was apparently also a major part in what would have been the first episode, but they chose not to air that. Anyway, it doesn't really make sense to put it out of chronological order like that. But it sort of makes sense from the point of trying to get us to like Sally and see her as the main character. So I don't know. It's sort of a toss up, I guess. I don't know. I'm on the verge of not wanting to watch anymore because it is just sort of a jumbled mess at this point.
Yeah.
But I also want to see if it starts to become more cohesive from here on. Like if they keep just jumping around out of time,
for no good reason.
yeah, for no good reason, without a good reason, then I don't know. It's probably not worth watching.
But if the 5th episode picks up with the Sally Frau thing that it already established, then you're probably
well, I assume that the 5th episode is going to pick up from where we left off in the 3rd episode, because the 3rd episode is completely out of time with all the rest of them.
Oh, really?
Because so our 1st episode and our 2nd episode are Sally and Frau and the battling of the Onis in the city, and then the girl sort of joins them, and then there's a big time skip before the 3rd episode, and then the 4th episode is a jump back. It would have made more sense if the 4th episode were the 3rd episode, I think, for the flashback, because then we wouldn't have gotten to know this other character quite as much as we do.
Yeah.
And we could have still been somewhat surprised by his delight in massacring Oni. But I don't know. Yeah, it's just I can't say I'm recommending this show. It's still a 5 out of 10. It's been a 5 out of 10 since the beginning. It's like it's fine. I like Sally and I like Frau, and if it's not really going to be like a story following them, then yeah, I'm probably out.
Yeah. I mean, I dropped it after the 1st, but Frau was the only thing I really liked about it. So that would suck if, she's not even really part of it after that. But
yeah, and in the 3rd episode, she's almost nothing. Like there's not much of her. And of course, the 4th episode, which is the first before we meet Frau,
she's not in it at all.
She's in it at the very end when Sally sees her, and that's
okay.
it. And the 3rd episode seems to be setting up like a battle arc of some sort. So I'm guessing that's where the 5th episode picks up, which is not super enticing for me, but
yeah, battle arc, that's like a trigger warning for you.
Yeah, I just yeah. Not what I'm looking for in anime.
Yeah. I mean, I like a battle arc if it's like set up and, there's stakes and, there's a purpose to it, but a lot of times in shonen kind of stuff, it just evolves into like, well, this is the most interesting thing we can come up with. And
I like a battle if it's well set up, but it doesn't need to be an arc.
Yeah, well, it depends on what they're fighting for, but yeah, it's like, yeah, I agree.
I don't think it depends on what they're fighting for. I disagree with that statement. I don't see any reason that a battle should take more than one episode.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess it's sort of tournament arc maybe, which those ones I guess I can give it, some more episodes on there, but I don't know.
But that's also like the tournament arc is sort of a tired trope or story element in anime, where it's like, if you're going to go that route, you better make it interesting or make me care about why why these characters are invested.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like, I guess that's what I mostly wanted to say about Peach Boy was the presenting it out of order. I sort of see why they did it, but I don't think they should have. Which is sort of what I said right at the beginning of this before talking about it for 15 minutes.
All right. Well, I'm curious. Look forward to hearing what happens with that. You kind of criticized me for bailing on this show early, but from what it sounds like,
because you didn't even watch the 2nd episode.
Yeah, I saw all I needed to see.
But you could have seen more.
Cheaply animated, and I didn't care. I didn't really care about Sally. Not that I disliked her, but then you told me off mic, that they haven't revisited this whole like tentacle rape backstory thing.
Yeah, haven't.
And maybe I'm unjustified, but that whole thing turned me way off to it because it wasn't like a just one-off gag. It was like seemingly part of the canon, like something important, like they paid special note to it. And
I mean, I think it'd be worse if it was just a one-off gag. Like, oh, she sees an octopus and she imagines tentacle rape. What? And that's it. We never hear anything about it again. No, they have to come back to that and justify it, right?
That's what I'm saying. They didn't play it for laughs. They played it as like a serious traumatic, reaction. So yeah, they have to address it. Otherwise, it's just like a red herring, right? But like if they had played it for laughs, I'm not saying it makes it any better, but at least you can more easily sweep that under the rug, to give it another episode. But like once I saw that, I was just like, and the whole battle, that happened in the episode, I just didn't care. Like it just seemed, which I have similar complaints as you did with Ida, which I'm still watching, but so fair enough. But that whole battle in the first episode of Peach Boy just seems so like edgy and like just trying to be like bloody for the sake of it.
And yeah, I see what you mean there.
I just didn't care. Like when I saw the trailer, I saw that walrus guy and he seemed kind of cool, and then he just turned out to be like a one-note, uninteresting villain that is wrapped up pretty quickly. So it's like, okay,
yeah, but his companion is an ongoing part of the show.
She's continuing on.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard when you watch a bunch of shows that just came out and you don't have enough time to continue watching all of them. So you got to draw that threshold somewhere. So that fell below for me.
Yeah, I would be very surprised if I watch more than one more episode of this, but yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, who knows? If they get back to the Frau stuff, I could totally see that because I did like her. All right, well that wraps up Peach by Riverside for this episode, and we'll move on to our second spotlight, which is Sonny Boy, the other boy.
Sonny Peach. No,
Sonny Peach Boy. I'm drinking a peach mango drink, and I kept thinking of Peach Boy. But then we got the Sonny Boy. It's all tied together. There's so many layers.
I'm drinking a Rolling Rock, which has nothing to do with anything.
That's true. I'm trying to think of something. Nothing's coming. But you saw the first episode of Sonny Boy and have not seen the second one. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I'm caught up. I've seen both. And so we can dig into this first episode, and then I'll just kind of give my general thoughts about the second one, as to not spoil things. But certainly we cannot talk about Sonny Boy without talking about the classic required reading high school novel that is The Lord of the Flies.
Yeah, we can talk about it without talking about that.
I don't think so. I think it has to be mentioned. But then there's also the first thing that came to my mind is I don't know if you're familiar, but there's a classic horror manga that came out in the 70s called The Drifting Classroom, and I've read the first. Know that. Never heard of that. Kazuo Umezu, this guy who drew and created that, and I was doing a little research, but like The Lord of the Flies came out in the 50s. Drifting Classroom came out in the 70s, and it's like definitely inspired. But the reason, and then this Sonny Boy is definitely related to both of them, I think, because in the Drifting Classroom, it's more, it's a younger, like Lord of the Flies, it's younger, like grade school, like elementary school kids, and their entire classroom is transported to this sort of bizarre jungle world, and it's just the grounds of the classroom, and it's only the kids that were transported. And so very much like Lord of the Flies, it goes into very dark territory and deals with a lot of these themes of power struggles and different personality types, and who takes control and who fights back, and definitely themes that have been explored like a lot, and different, there's so many things that relate back to Lord of the Flies, sort of a pivotal literary work. But yeah, I'm kind of into it in general, just the idea. But this one, Sonny Boy, as it starts, the thing I like about this show is it doesn't spoon feed anything. It's just kind of like you're just in it. And so as we start, the classroom is just kind of in this black, or the school is like in this black void, and we're not really sure what's going on. And things are kind of mundane at first, but as we slowly go along, we learn that they don't know what's going on. The entire school has been transported, and certain people seem to have these powers, like superpowers that they can do or use. And this is kind of going on in the background as we're introduced to our lead characters, which I
But all the teachers have disappeared too.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So classic, yeah. Like that always has to be the case, right? Where it's like just the kids. But in this case, it's more like it's high school age kids, not elementary school
Yeah.
or like young kids. It's they're a little older, a little more learned, but more like hormonal
Mm.
and yeah, and a little like potential to be scarier, in this sort of context of there's no adults around, no authority figures. And
Mm.
so a lot of this first episode devolves into or evolves into some of the characters wanting to set up a structure, like we need some sort of like authority structure because what if we are transported back to our real world and we're expecting to graduate, we don't want to show back up and we've destroyed the school
Mm.
and done all, just been delinquents and we'll all be responsible. And so yeah, they kind of set up this whole thing, and then it's introduced like different people have different powers that we're not necessarily aware of until they're using them, and then we kind of piece together like I don't know, like it's interesting in the way they tell the story, because it's not like usually like in a lot of anime you get like a bunch of exposition up top and then you kind of see things unfold, and this is kind of like just thrusts you into it.
We don't get a My Hero like flashcard up on the screen that says like their hero name and their power and
Yes.
blood type and everything else.
Or even like in the first episode of My Hero, where it's like, we live in a world where quirks were discovered, several years ago, and most everyone is born with one. You don't get that sort of narrator setting everything up, which I kind of like. I like the way it does it because it's you kind of have to. The way I thought of it is like these story elements kind of like tumble out. They don't like roll out in a linear fashion. There's like sort of like a zigzag of them like rolling out where like you have to kind of piece things together. And I like that it makes you work a little bit to do that. It's not just all on display and obvious of what's happening.
Mm.
But at the same point, I could see someone being frustrated with it because it's, can be kind of disorienting. But what did you think of Sunny Boy? Because it's one we both watched.
Yeah, I liked the initial concept of it, the classroom or the whole school actually being transported into this black void, and yeah, the fact that it's not explained is interesting, assuming that things will be explained over time,
Yeah.
which they are little by little. But yeah, the first episode fairly confusing and somewhat disjointed in places. Animation art wise looks nice. There's a few scenes that look like they're live traced rather than just hand drawn.
I think like rotoscoped or
Yeah, there's
I didn't pick up on
a
it.
few that look like that, and then occasionally some of the animation is not very good, where the backgrounds and the foregrounds are moving differently enough that it doesn't make cohesive sense in the space that they're supposed to be trying to portray. But yeah, I mean, it looks cool, but there's some animation issues, I think.
Interesting. I didn't pick up on some of those issues you mentioned. I really liked the way it looked. I thought it played with contrast very interestingly, especially when you have like this black void that they're in. And then I like the texturing of a lot of the like the backgrounds, but also the characters themselves. Like it wasn't like overly detailed, but it had like enough detail where it felt like lived in and had this more kind of like more like not ultra realistic, but like leaning more towards like a realistic kind of feel to it of like actual high school kids, and it really foregoes a lot of that goofy zany chibi esque. It's very plays it kind of straight visually of these characters and what's going on and how they're even when you get these like superpowers, like the school's like folding in on itself and turns into like an MC Escher like
Right.
artwork. It's still like pretty like despite that pretty like realistic and grounded.
Yeah, that's all true. What else do I have in my notes? Oh yeah, fuck Funimation.
Yes, you must mention the ultra popular hashtag that's sweeping the nation,
Hashtag
the world.
fuck Funimation.
Yeah, Funimation. This show's on Funimation, and with that comes a myriad of technical issues across platforms. And yeah, that's just unfortunate. I do like the. There's no. I've seen the second episode. There's no opening theme thus far. There's only an ending theme,
Hmm.
and I quite like it. It reminds me of. It seems. At first I thought it was the band The Pillows, which they did the score, or a lot of their songs were used for the score of Fooly Cooly FLCL, the original
Hmm.
back in the day. And it's not The Pillows. I forget. I didn't write it down. I did look it up, but yeah, it's a good song. It's like sort of reminiscent of like 90s indie rock kind of song. But it's
Hmm.
Japan, like kind of rock band. It's cool. It's, fuzzy garage rock with like sort of nostalgic 90s feel.
Hmm.
And
I
dig
don't
it.
remember it.
I remember it.
Mm-mm.
Um, yeah, I like that. And then, I mean, and then there's a cliffhanger with this episode that I don't want to dig in too much. And I wish I didn't write the characters' names down. But there's this female lead who
Hmm.
is I don't know. I like her a lot. She's my favorite part of it. Like so far, she kind of exists outside of these cliques and like refuses to get a smartphone. There's a um, pretty amusing scene in this where
Hmm.
they're trying to give her a smartphone when they're incorporating all these rules, and
Hmm.
it turns out someone has a superpower um, that they're using as an to enforce these rules,
Hmm.
and she defies all of that and ends up getting punished for it, but it's still cool. I like how she sticks to her guns. And
Her name is Nozomi.
Nozomi, nice.
Yeah.
I like it. We need to do some more character sheets for.
Oh, I think. Wait, who is so I oh here Aoyuki
Hmm.
is a voice in this.
Oh,
She's the voice of Mizuho,
which
which
one?
is here. Let me show you her.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
she is much she's featured much more prominently in the second episode. That's cool to
Mm.
know. I like her character too. Nice.
Yeah, and just throwing that in.
Yeah, one of your ladies.
Aoi Mania
That's right.
is
Cool.
the old fan club site that doesn't exist anymore.
Well, just
Disappointing.
revive it, baby.
Well, that was the website, aoimania.com.
Mm,
Yeah, it's not there anymore.
okay. Can't buy it.
I don't know. Maybe I could. Maybe I should. I'll look into it.
Maybe just have it redirect to like anime.
Yeah, I'll have to create a whole Oyuki page.
Hmm,
Yeah.
nice. That'd be cool. So I guess I will talk briefly about the second episode. Tony hasn't seen it, so I won't go into spoilers.
I
But
mean, I can take off my headphones and go to the bathroom.
no, it's fine. For the listeners too, I don't want to spoil a lot, but I like where it's going because it's like you watch the first episode and without seeing the cliffhanger, you kind of get the sense of like, is this the set and setting that we're going to be trapped in the whole time? And no, that's not the case. It's going to expand beyond that. But I really like how they're doing it because you would kind of mention this too with this first episode, and it continues in the second where we're learning things as these characters are, and we're kind of part of that process. But it still doesn't make any concessions to like spoon feed what's happening. There's a scene in the second episode where there's a flashback and there's no discernible visual cue that like kind of story wise there is when you think about it. Like they're kind of talking about something and then boom, we're in the flashback. And I was very confused of like thinking this was happening in our current time. But no, it's a flashback. And I guess that goes both ways where it's disorienting, but I like that they're sticking to this sort of perhaps disjointed and inconsistent, but like consistent to itself, but like not with like not accepted like visual cues of like doing a flashback. Not that it needs to like dissolve into like a have some cheesy effects there. But yeah, they're continuing to examine this sort of social implications of these teenagers being stranded, not knowing where they are or what to do. And I like in this first episode where they kind of just accept the circumstances, and they try to work within that framework and build some structure and have these rules and have this whole dynamic. And then once that is sort of moot, we move on to a new thing. But we already know some of these personalities, and we learn, with, like I was mentioning, this backstory, we learn some of these character dynamics and some of the history they have with each other, and it kind of carries through. So it's like, yeah, this one character is like a bit conniving and underhanded, while this other one is kind of wistful, but she's often misunderstood, and they're carrying all this baggage from their real world, but still trying to navigate this current world they're in. But they're all like meshing together because they're hormonal teenagers, and they can't just let go of these petty squabbles or altercations they've had in the past. Like they're carrying it all with them through this. Even though they're all in this together, you'd think, as adults or something, they could, like, bury the hatchet, so to speak. But turns out to not really be the case.
I was just thinking on the disjointed or confusing aspects of this. I felt the same way when I watched Steins Gate initially. The first episode is disjointed and confusing, much like this is.
Yeah.
But I pushed through it, and I mean, eventually it all comes together, becomes cohesive.
Yeah.
It's not like standard storytelling practice, the way that it's being told.
Yeah.
But it all makes sense eventually, which, because I like the concept of this, I'm willing to give it, some time, but it's gotta at least try and make some sense.
Yeah. And I think it does, but I'm curious to hear what you think after the second.
I haven't seen the second episode yet, so it's and what you were saying about there being more of a world out there, I presume that from the way the first episode ended, was that this is sort of like the reveal of,
Yeah, there's like a whole new layer beyond what they originally thought,
right?
And now they have to contend with that.
Yeah, and they show us like teeny little bit of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I liked how that first episode ends with that, because it's like after there's sort of a suffocating feeling after being in this void. And then, they discover something else beyond it. And it's like, oh, wow. Like, I don't know. They do a good job at like getting you to, at least getting me to empathize with them and their situation. And then when everything changes, it's like, wow, this is like a breath of literal fresh air, I guess. But without getting into all of those details.
Salty sea air.
Yes. And it's so funny too, because when I saw that cliffhanger, your mind starts to run. Like, what are the implications of what does this mean?
Yeah.
And then, this second episode, you kind of get caught up to speed with what they've figured out, and then it goes from there. I don't know. It's really interesting. I really like it, and I recommend to anyone who enjoys this checking out The Drifting Classroom, because that's I wish it's such a classic horror manga from the 70s, but it's never been, as far as I know, never been made into an anime. But I think it really could be, deserves to be. But
yeah, I've never even heard of it.
It's good stuff. I've read the first few volumes, and like this is prompting me to want to finish it. Like, so I don't know. Maybe at some point during this season, in honor of Sonny Boy, I'll do that and talk about it.
Is it on your Shonen Jump app?
No, I don't think so.
No.
I wish, yeah.
Probably too old for that.
Yeah, and it's not really like, it's darker and, more depressing than a standard Shonen Jump show.
Yeah.
or story. I do own the volumes 4, 5, and 6, and I checked out 1, 2, 3 from our local library where we live. And I read them, and then I intended to keep reading it, and I just fell off. I was in school at that time, it was a few years ago. So yeah, I need to pick up with that. But also shout out to your local library if you want to read some manga. Surprisingly, a lot of local libraries have a huge manga selection. So
collected volumes, but yeah.
So yeah, support your library. Damn it.
Yeah. Or if you don't feel like going to your actual library and getting the actual print things, they might have them available online through a library app. Like, I have a library app on my reading device. There's quite a few that I can get through that.
Nice.
As well. So
yeah, that's another digital. Go the digital route.
Yeah.
Yeah. So shout out to that, and we've had a decent episode length, and that's all I really want to say without getting into spoilers. So
yeah, I definitely need to watch the next episode of this.
Yeah, we'll get there.
And I was planning to anyway. It's not like this was on the verge of being dropped
Mm.
after the first episode, but it I do feel like it needs to do something in the second episode to make me continue to watch. It's not quite there to yeah.
Yeah, you need a little more convincing.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is fair, and it's often the case to do a few episodes. I do anyway to be sold on something.
Honestly, I don't think I was sold on Steins Gate until like episode 12 or something.
Yeah, and I think
it took a while.
I think maybe I implored you to keep going, or I don't know. We talked about that at some point, but
yeah,
because I was similar, where I watched the first few and I was like, man.
Yeah, it's one of those things where someone says, "Oh yeah, just wait until episode 12. That's when it really takes off." And you're like, "What?
The fourth season
Are you serious?
Is so good."
Oh my god, do I really have to do that?
Well, speaking of that, I was happy if anyone who listened last season, Tony checked out the first 12 episodes of One Piece, and I was really happy that you were like, "Oh wow, I could see why people would get into this." And it gets so much better. It's one of those shows that's famous for like getting incredibly good, like 300 episodes in or whatever. But I was happy to know that a fresh face was into it, like at least mildly from the beginning.
Yeah, I haven't continued it at all yet, but
yeah, it's a tall order.
Maybe at some point I will. I don't know. It'd be really funny if I just like caught up on it. I'm like, oh yeah, what episode are you on, George? Oh, you haven't read episode 1864 or whatever the hell we're at now. I don't even know.
Not that far. I think we're about to 1,000 episodes, but the chapters are beyond 1,000 at this point.
Yeah. Oh, that's what I meant was chapters.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. 1,019, I think we're at. The dang Olympics have delayed it a week, so I can.
Oh wait, chapter. You haven't read episode or chapter 1020 yet, George? Ugh.
Comes out Sunday, so do you have some premiere access?
Yeah, I'm friends with the guy that writes it. Yeah, and my wife.
I will cut
Morgan
you.
Fairchild.
If you were
a very dated reference.
I mean, in all fairness, if you were holding out on advanced One Piece chapters from me, like I would cut you.
They just keep sending them to me, and I throw them in the garbage.
Like I don't know what this shit means.
Why do they keep sending it to me?
Well, on that note, I think we're good. We wrap up this spotlight episode.
All right. So that's going to do it for us because we don't have anything else to say. Bye.
See you guys.
Just kidding. I got to say the like anime thing and spell it and everything like I always do. We're on all the social medias. You know the ones where they're media that people are social on. And you can find us at like anime. That's UMLIKEANIME on all of those things. And, we have a Patreon and we've got our website, likeanime.com. It's spelled the same way as I just spelled it. Imagine that. Likeanime.com. is the website. That's what I was saying. I wasn't just saying for no reason, like I always do.
We got Patreon. We got merch. You can hit us up on the socials. We would love to hear from you.
Yeah,
Dang it.
We do love hearing from people that listen to us because not only does it tell us that people are actually listening to us, which we like in and of itself, but honestly, most people that get in touch with us have something to say that is interesting that maybe we hadn't considered. Like we were talking earlier this week about, what's his name on Twitter?
The Duke Baloney or something?
Duke Baloney, that's right. I keep thinking Donkey Brains because he posted this thing on Twitter where it was like a fake certificate from like a fake psychiatric hospital saying that he didn't have donkey brains, and all I remember is the DB Duke Baloney donkey brains.
I
Anyway,
just keep thinking of Duke of Death and his baloney made. I don't know.
Yeah, anyway, he posted about what was the name of that Akira Kurosawa movie that I've never seen and that you've never seen?
You mentioned that. Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, let me find it real quick. In response to my posting about Little Daimon possibly having fired the shot in Odd Taxi last season.
One of the best shows of last season.
Yeah, he said losing the gun and potential scandal of it, which seems to be sort of the case of what happened with Little Daimon, is he said that he had lost the gun, and everyone was sort of making fun of him for it, but he didn't actually lose the gun. He had used the gun and then had to lose it.
He's covering up his own.
Yeah, but anyway, Duke Baloney suggests that maybe this is a reference to Nora Inu, which, again, Akira Kurosawa movie that I have never seen and honestly had never heard of. I mean, Kurosawa's pretty,
Stray Dog. Okay.
yeah, Kurosawa's pretty prolific. It's got Toshiro Mifune in it, right?
Yeah.
Who shares
Classic.
a birthday with me.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we did learn
Right,
that.
yeah.
Of Seven Samurai, also Kurosawa fame.
Yep. Anyway, I added it to my list. I plan on checking it out. And,
Looks legit.
If you have interesting things to say, honestly, if you have things to say that aren't that interesting, you'd be surprised how interesting we might find the uninteresting things that you have to say.
That's right. We're
Things
hungry.
Things that you think are uninteresting that we might find interesting. Yeah. Anyway, social media, do it.
Yeah.
Good night.
See you guys.